Hello everyone, a very good morning, and here we are back once again with the daily news analysis of 12th of August 2021. And today also we have really good topics in that, we'll be specifically discussing one topic very in detail because it is related to the constitutional things about the articles that are mentioned in the constitution. Apart from that, it also will be talking about certain kind of analysis about the minority educational institutions, and there's a body called National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights. Here we'll be talking about these particular areas. Why is this really important? Because very recently this commission of National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights, National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights has stated that they've made a recommendation. In fact, they stated that all the education institutions which are minority, right, all the minority education institutions should be brought under what is it called, the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, and also under the Right to Education Act. A very very important recommendation that they have made. So it is not that simple to make such kind of recommendation. And also, why bring them up into these particular areas? Are they all not already covered under them? So what could be the reason, right? So we'll try to look into these particular cases. So when you specifically talk about the minority education institutions, the National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights has specifically focused on two important institutions. One is about the madrasas. And the second one is about the Christian missionary schools. These are the two important areas that this particular National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights has focused on, and this particular article has been taken up from the Indian Express. So now what exactly did they say? The report has been titled as the impact of exemption under Article 15 Clause 5 with regards to Article 21A of the Constitution of India on the education of children in minority communities. Point to be noted, it talks about Article 15 Clause 5 and Article 21A. So we'll understand them slowly as we go further. Now, right now, when you talk about the minority education institutions that we have in India, right, the minority education institutions are not covered under two important things. One is about the right to education of the government, which guarantees, mandatory education to the children aged between 6 to 14 years. And number two is about Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. So now, what are they recommending here is that the minority education institutions must be covered under both of them. That is under the Right to Education Act as well as under the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. So they have made a lot of recommendations in this regard. So we'll go in details about that. But the first question that we would like to ask is how these schools are exempted. So firstly, it was in the year 2002. There was an amendment act passed called 86th Amendment Act to the Constitution of India, which has provided very specifically that right to education is a fundamental right. So accordingly, how it was done, they have inserted an article called Article 21A. So Article 21A has made very clearly that right to education is a fundamental right. So which means children who are in the age group of 16 to 14 years should and mandatorily get this education. And after this was done, right, after it was made a fundamental right, government has brought a program called Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. Now this is a scheme where implemented by the center as well as with the partnership of the states. So what they want to ensure, that is the same thing, that they would like to provide the education which is necessary, the education which is relevant, and those kind of things must be given to this particular children. Okay, this is something which has been proposed. Yeah, a very good morning. So now what is happening in this? Later on, so it was in 2002, then we have seen Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. Then in 2006, another amendment has been brought up called 93rd Constitution Amendment Act, which inserted Clause 5 under Article 15. So Article 15, Clause 5. What it says now? It says if the states want, they can create some special provisions for what? Reservation of the seats for any backward class citizens like scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, where in all the government aided and unaided education institutions. But The problem here is it is not something related to the minority education institutions. So whatever the reservation that you're providing, that would be provided only to the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and such kind of people who are in aided and unaided schools, but not in the minority education institutions. Okay, later on, government brought an amendment to the Right to Education Act. The government has brought the Right to Education Act of 2006. In 2009, the Right to Education Act has come, which made it mandatory that all the children must be in the schools, including the underprivileged people. So in this, the most interesting section is section 12 clause 1 subclause C. And what the section says is very clearly that 25% of the seats in unaided schools, that is the private schools whatever are there, 25% of the seats must be reserved for the economically weaker sections and disadvantaged groups. Point to be noted, a very, very, very important point. It stated very clearly, section 12 clause 1 subclause C says that 25% of the seats must be reserved to those particular children who are economically weaker section and disadvantaged groups in unaided schools. Now, all these have been focusing on one important thing, that is education must be provided to the children, right? Be it 2002, we have started 86th Amendment Act, be it Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, be it Right to Education Act, or be it with respect to any other kind of amendments that have been brought up, even Article 15 Clause 5, all of its objectives is to ensure that children must get the education, isn't it? I hope everyone is clear till now. But here comes another article, that is Article 30 of the Constitution of India, which is also a part of fundamental rights. Now what Article 30 says, it is up to the right of minorities about how they want to establish and administer their own education institutions. But yes, it was introduced with a really good motive. Now what was the motive? The motive for them is very clear, that children from different groups, be it linguistic or be it religious minority communities, they should be given a chance to protect their culture, to protect their script, to protect their language. But in 2012, an amendment act has been passed where we have made it very, very clear under the Right to Education Act that the institutions which are providing religious education will not be covered under this act. In 2014, when it is being discussed about Article 15 Clause 5's legality, even the Supreme Court has stated very clearly that the Right to Education Act will not be applicable to the schools which are there with the status of minorities. And they stated the government should not interfere with respect to the minorities and their education institutions. This is something which is very, very clear. Now, what made this commission to look into this? So why did they have brought out a study? Now the most important point here is, what did it say in the Article 30? Through this particular amendment, the government has made very clear that no one should interfere. Now my question, according to the commission, the question they have here is this: are they both not contradictory? And in fact, yes, that is true. The question that has been brought up by the commission right now is that, are they both not contradictory? They are, isn't it? Because just because that these people belonging to some particular minority groups, these people are unable to go ahead, isn't it? These people are unable to go ahead with certain kind of things. Now, they are not going to get the reservations and all in their schools, and they are completely exempted. So what about the disadvantaged sections in the minority communities? That's a question. Understood the controversy now? What about those particular minority communities where there are disadvantaged groups, where there are economically weaker sections, and if they want to go with this minority education institutions, what about them? So that is a question that has been raised very clearly, and we need to look something into this. So the commission says two different rules are there for the fundamental education that is supposed to be given to the children. So it is creating a kind of a conflict between fundamental rights of the children and rights of minority communities. This is the challenge now. So we need to do something for that. So accordingly, the National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights has started holding consultations with the different stakeholders, which include the teachers, students, communities, right from them, and about 16 consultations have already been taken up. It was discussed with the state commissions also, and this study was conducted in different kind of phases, phase 1, phase 2, in different kind of phase it was conducted to. And in the end, it was stated very clearly. What did the report say? Now the report stated that many children who are enrolled in these institutions, I mean the minority education institutions, they were unable to enjoy the entitlements that others are enjoying because these are exempted from the Right to Education Act. Yes. So for example, they talk about Christian missionary schools. They are admitting only a particular group of students. So they say that the commission has called them as cocoons populated by elites. That means the economically weaker section people are unable to join the Christian missionary schools. Number one. Number two, on the other side, with respect to the minority schools called madrasas, they stated the children in madrasas have been languishing in the backwardness because there is an unequal. So what is it? For example, they say majority of the madrasas in India do not provide a secular course along with religious studies. For example, sciences is not being taught in all the madrasas too. So for those who have actually studied here, they feel a kind of sense of alienation and inferiority, says the National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights. The report stated about only 4.18% of the total students have received the benefits like the free ships, free uniforms, books, scholarships and all from the schools. So now what do they say? It is very simple, that to ensure a free and compulsory quality education to children, the Right to Education Act already brought basic minimum infrastructure, number of teachers, books, uniform, midday meals, all these has to be provided. But because of these kind of things, they say they are not able to provide them in this particular case. Now, how many minority schools are there in India? And how many people, how many children are studying in them? So the commission stated that the high number of Christian missionary schools are there in the country in relation to the population of Christians as well as to the number of schools run by other minority groups. Now what happens? They may set up an education institution as a minority education and they will get some kind of support from the government. For them, that's a minority education institution, but they will not just, the point is, they will not just take only the Christian minorities, but that is open to all. So this particular commission says the number of schools that are actually taking the children are more than that of the population of this particular Christians. So they say, according to the report, Christians comprise 11.54% of minority, but they are running 71.96% of the schools. Muslims comprise 69.18% of minority, but they are running only 22.75% of the schools. Sikhs comprise 9.78% of minority and they are running only 1.54% of the schools and the minorities. And Buddhists comprise 3.83% and running 0.48 only. Jains comprise 1.9% and they are running 1.56%. So they say the number of schools run by the Christian missionaries are more than that of their population perspective too. It states 74% of the students studying in Christian minority schools are non-minorities. 74% of the students studying in those institutions are non-minorities. So across this particular minority communities, they say 62.5% of students in minority schools belong to non-minorities and only 8.76% of them belong to socially and economically disadvantaged groups. So what is a reservation? It's actually 25% and only 8% have actually been there. So this is a kind of problem. They say this needs a kind of relook. And they talk about different kind of madrasas we have in the country. There are 3 different types of madrasas. Those madrasas which are recognized by the government. So they provide both religious as well as secular courses. Okay. And in India, there are 10,064 such madrasas which have been recognized by the government and about 15.3 lakh have actually studied in them. Now, there are unrecognized where the government has not recognized them, but, they just don't provide secular education or they do not have physical infra and all. So, government has not actually provided them. And there are unmapped also are there. This is there. So one thing that must be very clear by now is this. I hope everyone is very clear about what we have discussed. The only concept that we have to come to the end of this particular case is that there has been an issue with the minority institutions because not all the disadvantaged groups, the weaker sections among these minorities are not getting the benefit. This needs to be taken very seriously, says this particular people. Okay, so that is all about the first one. That was a report by National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights. Okay, yes, National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights. So moving on to the next topic then. Let's go to the next one, shall we? Chalo. So the next one is about back channel talk was on before Balakot. So recently, it was just about a book by two foreign journalists. They say that there is some kind of involvement about what is happening and all. You could just go through it. It's a good article. In fact, you could actually read and enjoy this about what actually happened, before the Pathankot airstrike. They talk about, Mr. Ajay Doval, the NSA. They talk about, this particular Kulbhushan Jadhav case. They talk about, India, how it has done, what we specifically have done, this particular airstrikes, what India has done. All such kind of things have been mentioned very clearly here about about a book that is going to be released. It's an interesting read. I would suggest you to go through it rather than discussing that here. Okay, next. Now, for the first time, if there was a time, I hope you all remember, that it was published in the newspaper everywhere that the government has stated there are no oxygen deaths in the country during the COVID-19 time. Finally, the health ministry has admitted that some patients who were on ventilator support have died while undergoing the treatment for COVID-19, and the reason for their death is lack of proper supply of oxygen. They did not specify how many people, but the Minister of State for Health has mentioned that Andhra Pradesh has reported some patients died after a drop in the oxygen pressure at a hospital. And the ministry earlier stated no state has so far specifically told them about the deaths, and the only one state noted suspected deaths due to this particular state of Andhra Pradesh. In fact, it is worth to be appreciated. But the point is, whenever a system is functioning, whenever a government is functioning, there has to be a transparency prevailing in the system. If the transparency is not there, that's nothing but letting the people suffer, and you are not clear about what you are doing to. So finally, what is the news here is that the government finally admitted that there are some oxygen deaths in this case. And now Kaziranga. In fact, the Kaziranga has become the first national park in India which has now been equipped with the satellite phones. So the decision to provide satellite phones for boosting the anti-poaching measures were taken very recently when the chairperson, when a meeting has been chaired by the Chief Minister of Assam, and the Chief Secretary, State's Chief Secretary has handed over about 10 phones to Kaziranga forest personnel, and these would be satellite phones. They could be, they will be used in the pockets of the 6 ranges with no wireless or mobile connectivity. So where they could use without any kind of issues, they can contact anyone, and it has become the first in the country to use satellite phones, that is Kaziranga. So generally they are used only by the, the law enforcement agencies, but now this would give a great advantage to these particular people, especially during the floods. Okay, so the people are basically not allowed from using the satellite phones in India, but now they have procured 10 satellite phones with an estimated cost of 16 lakh rupees. So they would, the concerned Kaziranga National Park would bear the monthly expenses about whatever the service that is being provided by the BSNL. Okay, BSNL is the one which would provide those particular services, they say. So here they would be able to get certain kind of things done. Okay, so just give me 1 minute. So there are 2 more topics here. So with respect to the consumer disputes forum that we have in the states, there has been a delay in 8 states where there has been a vacancies there. So Supreme Court has become a bit serious on them, asking them, are you doing it deliberately or something? Do you don't want people to file the complaints and all? That is something we have. There's nothing much to. And lastly, there are 3 important public sector undertakings which the government has disinvested long ago during the term of Atal Bihari Vajpayee. So what are they? Paradip Phosphates, Hindustan Zinc and Balco. Finally, they have decided, the DPAM secretary, that is Department of Investment and Public Asset Management secretary, has stated that we would like to do the complete exit of it. Government owns 49% of stake in Balco, 29.5% in Hindustan Zinc. So now all of these would now be completely left to. So this is about this particular topic. There is nothing much that is present over here. So that is all for the day we have today. Okay, so these are the news, that is highlights of the 12th of August 2021, and the most important article, as we already have discussed, that's about the National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights and its announcement, a very, very, very important topic. So I would request and suggest you all to look into this. And yes, if anyone is interested in joining Unacademy Plus subscription, you can join using the code that I'm writing here, or you can also find the code in the description. Apart from that, at every day 2 p.m. I'll be taking a special class on the prelims MCQs for 2021. So see you all there. Thank you so much and have a great day, everyone. Jai Hind. See you all tomorrow also. Take care. Bye bye and Jai Hind.